When your husband's anger fills the room, it may look like strength. It's actually the moment he feels weakest, and you're the one paying for it.
Welcome to The Couple Cure.
Going through and talking about some of the storms that men deal with, that you're dealing with. This one is anger. And it may be one that's cost you the most peace in your home and the most stress in your life. And here's what I need you to understand about most men. Anger is a cover emotion. It shows exactly where he feels weak, vulnerable, out of control, embarrassed, or even feels caught being wrong. It may look like dominance or intimidation. It's actually fear wearing armor, and that doesn't excuse it. It doesn't make it your job to fix it, but it does explain what you're looking at when he's doing that. It is abusive. That type of intimidation and those activities are abusive, and you do not have to stand for them. This video is not about managing his temper for him. It's about what the anger is really hiding and why it so often lands on you. There's a specific thing that triggers most anger, at least with the men that I deal with. And once you can see it, you can stop taking that blast as if it were about you. And there's a reason you can't be the one that calms this storm, a reason that's actually good news for you. Let me show you what was really running the show in my own anger and what it did to Lori. Over a lot of years, I learned that most of my anger came from the expectations that I had. Things that I expected and didn't get, or things that I didn't expect when they happened. And the part that matters for you is that most of those expectations, nobody put on me but me. And everybody around me paid for them. On those occasions where Lori and I got to go on vacation and travel, that expectation, how it lived in me, is that we got to the airport just ridiculously early. Nobody told me to. It was something that I trained myself to do, something I felt like was the kind of the quote-unquote right response. My anxiety and tension over all this meant that I slept badly the night before typically, and that when I woke up, I was already at an 8.5 out of 10 before we ever walked out the door. That put Lori in a situation where she's traveling with me, but she was also traveling with a bomb. Anything could set me off. It could be something she did, or the luggage wasn't where I expected to be, or we were 5 minutes late getting out the door. So the start and end of all of those trips where we were trying to enjoy one another, where we were having time in our relationship to enjoy life, I ruined. Not by the airport, not by losing luggage or anything like that, but simply me and my expectations. She was the one sitting next to me for all of it. And so something for you to notice is when his expectations are the highest, his tolerance is going to probably be at its lowest level for anyone, including you. A man walking into a situation with a rigid picture of how it's supposed to go is a man who's about to be angry at whoever's nearest to him when it doesn't go that way. Often that's you or your kids, and it was never really about you. Lori pointed this out too. I would rage at other drivers on the road for doing exactly what I did. I could be angry at tech support before they ever answered the phone. When he explodes over something small, you're not seeing a problem you caused. You're seeing a rule book in his head that you were never given a copy of. And if that anger is covering weakness, why does it so often land on you? Because home is where he feels safe enough to let it out. He has a little bit of safety to feel weak, and he feels like you're the one that's there for him to blow up on. Again, it doesn't make it right. It makes it convenient to him. And so when he blows up, the real question isn't, what did I do wrong? It can be about what did he expect that he's not getting? And 9 times out of 10, it's an expectation he set for himself and never said out loud. That's not yours to carry. His anger tends to come out the hardest in those situations where he already feels bad, where he feels weak, scared, or exposed. And that means in his mind that he's failing, and that you are more likely to catch his response to that fear with his anger, his intimidation, or his abuse. And while that is backwards, it doesn't mean that you have to be silent. and it definitely means that it is not your fault. A man who uses anger to feel strong is abusing the people around him who are counting on him, who he thinks he's protecting. And so when you're counting on him and you're handed the most anger, you might have the instinct to keep the peace, to manage his moods, to walk on eggshells, but that doesn't work. That anger, I know for me, that anger filled the house. Everything about you may want to shrink away from it, try to smooth it over, prevent the next one, and manage his tension so it never tips over onto you. But you can't manage his expectations. He has them in his head, and trying to manage those expectations makes you responsible for a storm you didn't create. It trains both of you to believe that his staying calm is your job when it isn't. His expectations are his to name, not yours to tiptoe around. What actually helps him is for him to learn to catch his own expectations and to talk to other men before he makes a bad moment worse. There is a difference between a man who is angry and a man who is unsafe. If his anger frightens you, is used to control you, is used to keep you from leaving your home, if you or your children feel like your lives are not safe, that is not a storm, that's a safety issue. And your safety, your children's safety, come before the marriage. Please talk to someone. The helpline 988 is a good place to start, but you do not need to stay in an unsafe situation simply because your husband is angry about something. You can't calm this storm for him. And that's good news because it was never yours to deal with. His calm has to come from him letting go of his rule book and from other men who have learned to handle those unfair moments in life with a degree of grace and acceptance. And I say unfair moments knowing that it's only unfair in his head. And while you're an important person in his life, you can't be his circle. That's the work for him to do. I talked about back in episode 701. You don't have to be the shock absorber that lets him avoid doing the work that he needs to do. When he does the work, you come back to a home where you're not bracing, you're not expecting the next disaster. You get to go on trips that start and end well. You have freedom to have a bad moment near him without it becoming an explosion. You'll be able to have interactions where you're not feeling your shoulders tighten, where when you hear his car in the driveway, you're not running through your thoughts thinking what kind of mood he's in before he walks in the door. The house is not going quiet when he comes home. There's not a sense of relief when he leaves. You don't feel like he's just ready to go at any moment over something small. Your children are not trying to figure out how to act around dad. It's not a house that's living on edge if somebody spills something or having to be ready for any reaction that might come out of dad's mouth when something goes wrong. It's a much more peaceful environment, and you can be more free around him because you're not worried about having your own bad day or being tired or being wrong about something, that you forgot something. And it's not an excuse for him to erupt. You don't have to apologize or pre-apologize. And you're not having to shrink into yourself to keep the room calm. You're able to have your own feelings and emotions, and he's able to accept them in a much healthier way. The difficult questions that have been a challenge in the past where he has gotten defensive, and now he's taking ownership. Now he's able to accept his own behaviors and how they've impacted the relationship. Trips that used to start off with a focus on getting to the destination, I'm surprised at how many of my clients tend to live this way, that getting into the car and getting where they're going becomes much more of the focus than taking care of everyone and being on vacation before they ever get in the car. So they no longer start and end with that same tension. Now it's relaxing. It's relaxing to even think about going on vacation because you know that that whole process is going to be different, and you're going to arrive connected instead of worn down and having to fight from the beginning. He's actually there for you. He's not concerned about how people show up at the restaurant or whether or not they have his favorite meal or whatever it is. You get a partner in the room instead of someone who is a threat that you're trying to manage. And this may feel like a fairy tale, but his ability to accept the world around him as it is a big part of his recovery. There are whole chapters written in AA about acceptance. That sense of entitlement is a big part of what has developed out of the addiction itself, that the world will go my way, as opposed to I can adapt to the world as it is and be okay. I can stay calm. I can ask for what I need. There will be hard moments. There will be challenges, but it's not going to come with that same sense of explosion and blame and abuse that has happened in the past. If you have stayed through that process, hopefully that begins to change. And when it does change, the marriage, the relationship can grow and get healthy from that standpoint. That's the marriage on the other side of this storm. And his anger that made you feel like the problem, you were never the problem, and you were never meant to be the cure. This week, don't try to manage his moods. Don't walk on eggshells. Just notice one thing. When he gets angry, is there an expectation underneath? Did it ever get said out loud? You know, you're not fixing it. You're just learning to see this storm has a source, and that source was never you. Next time, we're going to talk about the storm of identity and what that means for him. If you think he's ready to do this work, send him to stormreadymen.com. And for yourself, continue to explore the C.U.R.E. method at thecouplecure.com.